Here's the second reason. When you list somebody's house, do you have an obligation to them?
Yes.
Okay, you have a fiduciary obligation to them, right? To help them get the best price, best terms and conditions in the shortest period of time possible. So if I go into a neighborhood, I may take an overpriced listing in a neighborhood I'm farming or I want to build a presence in or that's strategic, provided that it will not hurt the seller. So I'll give you an example of that. Neighborhood I farm in Wellington, I took a listing near the front of the neighborhood, little old lady, didn't really need to sell, but kind of wanted to try. Didn't have any plans to move, and I met her knocking on doors. So I took a 90-day listing. Put my sign in the yard and put up about 763 directionals. Made it look like I owned the neighborhood. And in the next 90 days, I listed about 6 houses in the neighborhood. Her house came off the market. It hurt my stats a little bit. She was not unhappy. She still likes me. She thinks I'm a nice guy and a good realtor. So it was a win-win. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. That's the other scenario that I would look at taking an overpriced listing. Go ahead.
Well, what is your fiduciary responsibility if you're going to take what you consider to be an overpriced listing? What's your fiduciary responsibility?
You're asking me or the crowd?
I'm asking anybody. What is it?
To let them know that you feel like they're overpriced.
As they're concerned, and to tell them, in your opinion, what the price for that is going to be. Mm-hmm. I don't know what I haven't seen everything done, but loss of time also means if there's a price change, how much longer does it take to sell typically? Mm-hmm. And that's how much money, that's payments, that's time, that's lost value of the home. Does a house sell for the same or less money typically if it's been on the market longer?
Much less.
Less. So, yeah, we can try that. I just want you to very clearly understand, as your consultant, I want you to very clearly understand what the cost of that is all likely going to be. We might get lucky and find that one person. God, I hope we do. Yeah. But if not, this is what the price is likely to be. And I want you to understand and be good with it, that you're willing to take that risk to pay that price.
Yeah. And that's a good point, because that's kind of a third scenario. But for me personally, and this is just my sales business, unless I am like close to 100% certain that I can get them real, I will not take the listing. I'm not going to let somebody talk me into, well, what if we get that one person? Even if it's a specialty property. And the reason for that, unless it's strategically valuable, right, and they understand, but I'm typically not going to take it. And I guess another way to say that is, have y'all ever been in a relationship of any kind, business, personal relationship? Any of y'all? Have you ever noticed that if you care more about that relationship than the other person does, it won't work?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So if I care more about that house selling than my client does, there's a problem. Mm-hmm. That's finding them motivated. I want them to care more about it selling than I do. Does that make sense? I want to find the people that are like, and it's unfortunate, but it's a divorce, it's a death in the family, it's an estate sale, it's a job that's making them move, it's a lost job. That's why short sales are not so bad depending on what bank has it, because at least the sellers are motivated. Okay, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have talked through how buyers search for homes, right? We talked through that earlier about the contracts. There's going to be there's about 50 closings per month in Wake County in the 300 to 350 price range. The 50 closings that are probably going to happen in July, most of those contracts are going to be written between now and the end of June. Okay, so in terms of a pricing strategy, understand that every time you go for a price reduction, whether it is a phone call or it's pre-written like Colleen was talking about, you need to move those sellers into a new price range. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. It's the closest you can come to creating a new listing. So if it's listed at $350 today, what kind of price reduction are you all asking for?
$25,000.
What's that?
$25,000.
$25,000? You?
I was thinking too.
Okay. Anybody else?
That'd be a gift, yeah.
Anybody else?
If they agree to it.
Know what I asked for? 50. I'm looking to move it from 350 to 299.
And then you get your 24.
Worst case scenario, I'll get my 24. But if I can get them to make that big of a move, I got people that are now looking at that house that have never seen it before, have never thought about it before. Makes sense?
This is my thought though here as well, okay? Mm-hmm. Everybody knows that the coast has taken a beating. Mm-hmm. It literally, at least with the people that I have spoken to, it's almost like they've had this sense that Raleigh has been in its own little bubble, that
Mhm.
we've been isolated for whatever factor is in their head.
Sure.
And that would be, unless you're talking about a much larger priced home,
Mhm.
but to get 350 to 299 in this price range
Mhm.
is huge.
Okay, and I agree
Because-
with you.
Because it's, a lot of people just, at least in our area, when I talk to people, it's almost like this instant thing of, this is where we are. Well, I understand that in Arizona or Florida or this or that, because I go over the whole national thing as well, but it's almost as if, well, we're different. Well, we're not Myrtle Beach, we're not, you know,
Right.
it's, so, yeah. I
So
mean,
in essence, one of the things that you're saying, sort of, is that the entire market is still in a bit of denial.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay, so but that's something to understand. And believe me, like 3 years ago, when I was asking for those kind of price reductions in Wilmington, people were looking at me like I had 8 heads.
Well, and the thing is people are better than they were a year or two ago.
Right.
Because they've watched the market go like this.
Exactly.
And now it's like they've gone, oh, but it's not my house.
Right.
I mean,
They're
it's-
still in denial.
Yeah.
But and I agree with you. And I'm not saying that you have to stick by that $50,000 on
Yeah, yeah.
as a hard and fast rule. These are concepts. And I would still ask for it, because what that says to the seller is, holy smokes. Because see, if you ask for 25 and then you might get 10, right? So what good does that do you on a $350,000 house? Not so much.
Right.
But if you ask for the 50 and you can get them to move from 350 to 330, that's pretty strong. That's a much stronger price reduction, and that helps them. Now, I wouldn't ask them for that reduction if I thought the house was worth 330 or 340, right? This is assuming that it's obviously not worth 350, but it's worth. Am I making sense? Okay, go ahead, Brian.
Ralph's got a good slide that he calls it death by 1,000 price reductions. That it says that it just could end up chasing the market on down and
Absolutely, absolutely.
letting them know today's the day, not 3 months from now. And
Okay. You had a question? Your hand went
No,
back
I'm
up.
just gonna say, this has been fabulous, but I have to go, I have a listening.
Oh, you're gonna miss out on the most fun exercise of all.
Well,
No, it's too bad.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so how long are y'all taking listings for right now?
6 months.
love to have 6
Oh, 6 months, who else? Somebody said a year.
That's me.
That's you. Okay, I'm gonna give you an idea. Don't jump out of your seat and yell at me. Okay, I don't take listings for longer than 90 days. Okay? What do y'all think about that?
Rachel will tell you that that's ridiculous.
Okay? And what I would here's what I would say. Number one, the reason that I take listings for 90 days, 2 reasons. Number one, it's a differentiator. Because what I'm going to tell my sellers is, all the other real estate agents out there right now are trying to lock you into a 1-year contract because they don't know how to sell your house. And if I don't have it done in 90 days, I have not done my job. Number two, I do it for 90 days because it forces the conversation at 90 days. If I've somehow not done it right, not pre-written my price reductions, not done all this stuff, then at 90 days, I'm gonna fish or cut bait, okay? Because this is my business. Does this make sense to y'all? And Rachel and I would have it would be real interesting to see the results.
Guys, if you look at the days on the market, if you look at the graphs of it, houses, the only reason the average days are under 129 or whatever they are right now, which is close, the only reason they're up there is because of all the ones that sit on the market forever because they're not priced right. The fact is, the ones that sell quickly. The days on the market is for what sell.
Yep.
And on an average is much, much lower, particularly if you go median, it's much lower than that because the things that are priced right sell quickly, everything else sits.
That's it.
And so 90 days is plenty, and the fact is that, like you say, it forces a conversation at that time, if they're going to get real or not, and it puts the onus on you. And the real truth is, if you do the pricing strategies right and tell them I don't need 6 months, because the fact is, we're either going to price it right and sell it quickly, or we're not going to sell it.
Mm-hmm. I just leave it there, because what I don't want is to be 6-8 months into this, and I'm going to tell you, I don't want to be there because I have been. You understand what I'm saying? Like, I've led some sellers down the path or allowed them to go down the path where if I had done my job the right way, they would have sold their house in 60 days and I probably would have kept them out of a short sale. Okay? So this is so this is not just me up here kind of talking. This is based on some painful experience where I've watched friends of mine go through short sales because I didn't do my job the right way. Doesn't feel real nice. So that's why I've kind of gotten very pedantic, is probably a good word, about how long I'll take a listing for and what I'll take it and where I'll take it in terms of pricing. Okay, because, and I'll give you an example. So I list a guy's house, and this is another way to get a price reduction. List a guy's house and did a good needs analysis, and he shares with me he's disabled, he's on disability, he has blown all of his money day trading, he's got lots of credit card debt, and he's in a mess. I mean, the guy's in a mess. And if you think I like numbers, this guy is like an off the charts seat. He's driving me nuts. And I'm trying to get him to reduce the price on his house. And he won't. He wants me to tell him in the 7 different comps that I found that prove that his house should be priced lower, the brand and type of hardwood floors in the house, because he thinks his are worth more. Right? So I call him and I'm talking with him, and he's trying to get me to do this, and I start doing that work, and I stop and I pick up the phone and call him back, and I said, Bob, listen, I have a couple thoughts for you. Number one, this is not how I run my business. I don't do this for anybody else, so I can't do it for you. Number two, you shared with me that if we don't get this home sold, probably in the next 60 to 90 days, you're looking at having to declare bankruptcy. If not, you're going to have to give it back to the bank and go through foreclosure. He said, yeah, and the worst thing I ever did was share that information with you, because now it just makes you want to reduce the price on my house because you know I'm vulnerable. Right? Those were his words. Mm-hmm. I said, okay, Bob, I understand what you're saying, and here's the deal. My job is to protect you. And every day that we go by without a price reduction, I'm just participating in your financial demise. And I'm not going to do it anymore. So my assistant's going to come by tomorrow and pick up the sign in the lockbox, and I'm emailing the termination paperwork to you in about 15 minutes. Because that's the mindset that I have. I'm not going to hold these people's hands and make them feel okay while they walk down the path to financial ruin. I mean, it's most people's largest investment, right? So he called me back he actually emailed me the next morning at 6:30 and said, more or less, I'm sorry, I'm a jerk, you were right, I'm wrong, I'll reduce the price. And we reduced the price and it went under contract in the next 30 days. But those kind of experiences have forced me to take kind of a hard line on the pricing. And I overcorrected for a little while, where I wouldn't take anything unless it was just pristine and perfect. And what I've kind of come back to now is the ability to really go deep on the first part of this class, which is understanding their motivation, where they're headed, how this impacts them. Does that make sense? Because I feel like I'll do a better job. Ralph has taught y'all about enthusiasm. The last 4 letters, I am sold myself, right? So I feel like I can do a better job of getting someone's home sold than anybody else in Wilmington. It's just my opinion. Maybe it's arrogance, but I believe that much in it. And so I use that to make sure that I give my clients my best effort. And the best effort means really understanding where they are and whether or not I can help them and telling them no. But you've got to be extremely focused on their needs. Does this make sense? Okay. Am I beating a dead horse? Okay. So we talked about 90-day listing agreements. Now, do y'all write price reductions into your listing agreements?
This is something that we've talked about doing, we just haven't done it.
Do it.
Yeah.
It is awesome, okay? Because what ends up happening is you don't have to call and argue with the seller about it again.
Right, and the seller also forgets that conversation that you had at the listing appointment.
Absolutely,
So
they
if
may
you
be
have it
written
written in,
Yeah.
But don't you have to have the reduction paper signed each time anyway?
Mm-mm.
Not if it's in the original?
Not if it's in the original listing agreement.
Gotcha.
Because what I put it in, and now, Linda, you're the broker in charge, so I'm going to, in the offices in Wilmington, I just write it into the additional provisions.
Yeah, you can do that. There's this old argument, well, are we really representing our sellers when we put it on the market for 200 and we've already built in some, price, I call them improvements.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I would write them in.
Yeah.
Because when you go back to try to have that conversation again, they forget all about it. You got to deal with all the emotions again.
Yeah, and the thing is, there's a great script I learned from Star Power, that says, look, Mr. Seller, you and I can negotiate the price right now, or we can all try and negotiate with the buyer later. Which one do you want to do?
Exactly.
And this is a way of negotiating it with them now. You've already got their mind made up that it's going from 170 to 160, and then 160 to 153, and then 153 to 145. That's done. And then all you do is send them an email. Hey, per our listing agreement, the price was reduced, from 170 to 160 today. We'll let you know the results of our change in market position. Done. Now, the other side of that coin, and people ask me this, well, but what if? And I say, look, Mr. Seller, if we've got 4 people that are coming back for a second showing that day, we won't reduce the price. Okay, we'll hold off on it a day or two and just see what happens. I'm not going to give away your bottom
But
line.
you're basically saying if the activity's not there, then we've already predetermined at what point we're gonna hopefully increase that activity.
Exactly. Okay. So write the price reductions in. Every listing that I've taken, and it's not been many, okay, because I'm revamping my sales business, but every listing that I've taken in the last 6 months has had pre-written price reductions in it, and every single one of them is either under contract or sold, except for the one active that I have right now, and it's due for a price reduction in 7 days.
I'm assuming you do it like 2 weeks or
Three.
what do you-
Every
Every
3
three?
weeks.
What kind of verbiage do you use?
Price to be reduced from X to X on thus and such date. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So price reduced from 170 to 160 on June 1st, comma, price reduced from 160 to 153 on July 1st. And that's another like negotiating point I'll use with the seller, is they'll go, I don't want to do it every 3 weeks. Okay, we'll do it every 4. That's just a way that I can give a little bit for them to feel better about it. We talked about price reductions. The next component of this is based on conversations with sellers. How many of y'all like talking to your sellers right now? It's just it's like the joy of your week. You're so excited about it because you've had the house on the market. Well, Amy's talking to sellers. Amy's been talking to sellers who've been on the market for 9 months. And right? Okay. So what do you say to them? Do y'all find that you run out of stuff to say?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. We're going to give you some ideas here.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I have one in particular, and I'm trying to find, their motivation's just not there, and it's probably a listing I really shouldn't have taken, but I did. And, it's one of these folks who are, well, if one person comes by, let's put it on the market, and those kinds of things, and we don't really have to sell. And I know what their ultimate prize is to build a home that they want to live out the rest of their years in. But getting them to understand, that, for some reason they think the market's going to go back in 3 weeks and they're going to lose all this money.
Right.
And I trying to show them all the graphs, and just haven't been able to get through to them.
You ever seen Cool Hand Luke?
Mm-mm.
Anybody ever seen Cool Hand Luke? Some men you just can't reach, so you get what we had here last week, which is failure to communicate. You're not going to get some of them. I mean, some of them just aren't going to. Okay, so let's talk about what you say to a seller. This is from a book called Fierce Conversations. Anybody ever read it? Great, I know you read it, right? Great book. Susan Scott, get the book, read it. It'll help you in more ways than just real estate. But she uses a couple points. Number one, and this is just maybe some life and other business information that's kind of a side benefit of coming to this class. The conversation is the relationship, just so you know. Think about that one for a while. That's an interesting thing to kind of noodle on. But she goes through a couple different conversation techniques, and one of them is called mineral rights. And it's about drilling down and mining, very similar to what we talked about earlier in terms of going 3 deep. So this conversation piece, though, is mineral rights, and here's a good dialogue for your seller that you have to call. Maybe this will work for you. So you call them up and you say, so Linda, hey, it's CV over at Keller Williams. How are you today on this
I'm
Monday?
great, Stevie. How are you?
I'm doing good. Well, you sound really chipper for a seller in Raleigh these days.
Tell me you have an offer in your hand.
I wish I did, but I don't. So, but Linda, I was just thinking about you this morning. What's the most important thing that you and I could talk about today? I've got some time to spend on the phone with you.
When you gonna sell my house?
When am I going to sell your house? So what's going on from your perspective there?
Well, I don't see any showings, so what's going on?
Well, we've had it on the market for, what, four months or so now?
About right.
So how's this impacting you?
I'm beginning to feel it.
Yeah? Okay. So what about your family and your job? I mean, how does this affect all that stuff?
Well, it's pretty stressful. I'm getting tired of cleaning this house every day, waiting for that showing.
Sure, sure. So when you think about all that kind of stuff, how does it make you feel?
Not good.
Not good? Okay. So, Linda, what can you do to really impact this situation here, the outcome of this?
Find another realtor, probably.
Well, yeah, you could do that. That's one of your options. Are there any others that you can think of?
I guess I'm gonna have to go back to our conversation early on about looking at the price again.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, pricing, obviously, like we talked about, if we put your house on the market for $80,000 today, there'd be a lot of people from here to Wilmington wanting to buy it, right?
Think so.
Yeah. Do you think maybe we've proven that the $200,000 mark doesn't work, though?
I'm beginning to believe you.
Okay. So let me ask you this question. When we get this house sold, when we get this whole issue resolved, what difference does that make in your life?
Takes the stress off.
Okay. And I'd like to help you get there. So what's the most important step that we can take to get you towards less stress in your life?
You tell me.
Okay. Well, how would you feel if we moved the price from 200 to 175?
Whoa!
You want me to do what?
No.
You know what I could do with $25,000?
Is it in your pocket right now?
No.
Okay. So what do you think about moving the price to
I'll
175?
come in the middle with you. How's that?
Okay, so what does that mean to you? 185?
Maybe.
Okay, let's do that. I'll have paperwork to you this afternoon. Okay, so the point isn't that it's going to go that way every time. I mean, you get that. But the point is to begin to ask them questions, okay? And one of the key points in Susan Scott's book is to let silence do the heavy lifting. Does this make sense? Ask the question and shut up.
Well, it's self-discovery for them.
Absolutely.
And it's, are they feeling the pain? But it's not telling them they're feeling the pain. It's getting them to discover it's getting painful.
Yeah. You want them to hear it. You want them to say it. There's something to be said for them to say it, for them saying it. One of the other pieces that's real interesting in this is understand that when you ask some of these really hard questions, they may have to go through a little mini grieving process to answer the question. Right? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They may have to go through denial, anger, bargaining, all in the span of about 6 minutes to get through the answer to the question. And I know this preaches real easy coming from a realtor that's supposed to be out there listing houses and stuff and I've had an assistant that is on the phone with sellers all the time, and I'm not the one that's necessarily getting beat up all the time, right? But it does at least give you kind of a layer of armor to go, okay, it's not me. Mm-hmm. It's them reacting to the whole situation, okay? One of the most painful things that I've ever experienced was not being able to do this and then seeing a house go into foreclosure after I had it listed because I couldn't do my job well enough. Now, sometimes it's because the person was a professional victim, right? Which there's nothing you can do with that. But sometimes it really is because I just didn't have the skill or the knowledge or these techniques, or I wasn't bold enough to do it. Does that make sense? Because it does take some intestinal fortitude to do some of this stuff sometimes. Okay. Any questions about fierce conversations?
But if you have your price reductions in your listing agreement, you don't necessarily have to have that.
Yes! All right, that's your aha for today, right? Exactly, and I was going to say something about that. Yeah, because if you pre-write the price, this is, now your existing whatever 9,000 listings that Rachel has, you got to go do that with those people. But from this day forward,
I got a week. Mark up to it.
So from this day forward, if she pre-writes all the price reductions, boy, you got to have a lot fewer of those conversations, right? Then it becomes a business of ease and elegance.
Well, the truth of the matter is the market is changing so much. Even if we did a great job on coming up with our comps and everything else, the market's changing so much that in 30 days, it's entirely different again.
Absolutely.
In my neighborhood alone, in the last 2 weeks, like 2.5 weeks ago, there was a townhouse that sold for 174 and 170, 166, and then one just went under contract at 159.
Whoa. Yeah.
And I did a CMA on a house just like that last summer, almost a year ago. And there was a sale at $121 a square foot in January, $117 in February, $115 in March, $108 in April, $100 in May, $99 or $95 or something like that in June. And in July, the one that went under contract that was pending at the time was listed at $78 a square foot. And it was not a short sale, and it was not a foreclosure. I mean, you literally watch the prices going, you know, and it's interesting, and you got to have someone that is motivated and has capacity. So what that means, kind of back to some of this lead generation stuff we're talking about, you probably have to do 3 times or 4 times as much work to find the same amount of business as you did 3, 4, 5 years ago. Okay? All right, are we having fun yet? Okay, so bottom line, here's the deal. If you care more about the home selling than your client does, fire them. Make them go away. Fire them. It's not worth the hassle, the headache, and the frustration. I also believe that in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, there will be real estate agents that get sued for overpricing houses because it's a breach of fiduciary obligation. Does that make sense to y'all? They tell them, oh yeah, it's worth $250. I can get you $250 for this house, and really market value is about $220, and they end up selling it at $200 a year later because the first real estate agent was just trying to take listings. There are attorneys that are looking for lawsuits like that right now. Do you want to get sued for 50 grand? I don't, not really. So if you don't know you can sell it or know that it will not harm the client, don't take the listing. One of the other things that's important to think about in this market is losing your train of thought, which happens sometimes. But that's a big component of it, is making sure that you can get them priced ahead of the market, that you're upholding your fiduciary obligation to get them the best price, terms, and conditions. Okay, and do fire them. It's just not worth the hassle and the headache. I mean, you've yeah, been there, done
I
that.
think you have to be confident enough in yourself and how you want to do business,
Thank you.
and not let them try to tell you how you should do your business.
I think it's easier in times where you have lots of choices, but sometimes when you need that, you don't know, sometimes it makes that choice a lot harder.
I agree with you totally. And I think Michael brings up an excellent point that when business is really good, it's really easy to say no. But when business is tight and you don't have a lot of business, you tend to want to take listings whether you should or not. Voice of experience, from my perspective, Linda will probably echo this too. What ends up happening is you take listings that you shouldn't, because you're back to that first slide that talks about being transactionally based versus, and it hurts you, it hurts the client, it hurts everybody. And in the amount of time and headache that you have to spend dealing with that seller, you could be out finding the other motivated people.
Or doing something to improve your skills.
Yeah. Or going fishing.
Oh, yeah, spending time with your family, having some fun.
Yeah. Yes.
I want to share something with you. I actually took an overpriced listing in Riverside, but I know we priced it higher than where it should have been. But the sellers were actually did a lot of updates on the home. You know, they replaced the countertop with granite, and replaced the hardwood floor and the vinyl. I mean, they really
Did a lot to it.
Yeah, did a lot to it. So I told them initially that it should have been priced at $175, and they said no, we should price it at $184.9. So because of all that effort they did, and the house really looked good, we actually sold it in 6 days.
Perfect.
$179.
Yeah.
Actually, we sold it at $181. But then the appraisal came and said, Judith, I can't find any, you know, they can only go to $179. And so we came down to $179, and that's 6 days, and it was successful.
Absolutely. And I don't think that you had it overpriced.
Yeah, I think that's
I mean,
mentionable, but I mean.
$10,000,
Yeah,
you know.
compared to the,
Well, and I would say under $200,000, you're only looking at $10,000 price reductions each time anyways. It gets, you know, you can't ask somebody for a $25,000 or $30,000 price reduction on a $200,000 house. 10 works there, but it's when you start getting over 350 that it's, so and here's the other thing I'll tell you. How many of y'all love mauve carpet? And I'm going to run over just a little bit. Is that okay with y'all? Am I gonna, okay, because there's a fun exercise we're going to do here in just a second. How many of y'all love mauve carpet? Like mauve, like a purple color mauve. Like, right, that sells houses, right? Because that's what most buyers want. No, not so much, okay? So,